We are prisoners of unpassing time, wandering an unending land. What lies beyond, we cannot know.
Dragon's Dogma is a single-player action-adventure RPG developed by Capcom. The game was initially released in 2012 for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. The enhanced version, Dark Arisen, released in Japan the very next year, also eventually releasing on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and the Nintendo Switch. Dragon's Dogma has stood the test of time, receiving respectable praise on almost every metric for reviewer sites and gaming platforms. The game is beloved by almost every person I have spoken with. The conversation usually flows into the fun and engaging boss battles, the variety of classes, and the overall quality of the game's deeper mechanics and vocations. Well, today I'm going to be judging for myself, tackling as much of the game as I can, talking about the combat, classes, and everything I can uncover in Dragon's Dogma. Welcome back, friends. I'm Rogue, and this is one nerd's opinion of Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen. I'll be playing the Dark Arisen version of the game on PC. This DLC version of the game introduced the bitterblack island, a dark and foreboding place filled with mystical loot and terrible foes, but more on that later. For now, we begin with the opening title screen, and I have to say the background music already has adventure goosebumps crawling up my arms. The story, I say the story because this opening crawl is not my story. This starting hero is not the player hero and serves as more of a tutorial to Dragon's Dogma than your actual hero's tale within this adventure. Although I do believe it has story implications that may become relevant later. For now, we are Savan and we are set out to face off against a terrible foe. During this beginning area, I learned the basics of movement, camera control, pawn allies, although the system gets deeper as we will discuss later, combat, and get to encounter a bargain variety of enemies that I'm sure I'll be dealing with later on. Finally, I am faced with fighting a chimera, a mystical monster with the head of a lion, a goat, and a snake. This encounter serves as but a taste of how boss encounters flow, and so far, I'm pretty damn impressed.
Now choose, flee, or step forth. Take hold of what lies beyond. Claim mastery over the eternal ring.
With the death of the Chimera, we are thrown into a cutscene. A massive dragon forms out of a swirling portal as the sky floods with harpies, and the dragon begins its descent to the world below. Forging a character in Dragon's Dogma is pretty good. The character crafter is robust, allowing full customization of your chosen hero. It comes equipped with all the usual bells and whistles, and as with most RPGs with a good character crafter, this is probably where I spent most of my initial 2 hours of playtime. I decided to try my hand at placing myself within the world of Dragon's Dogma. You see, I like to go full nerd when tackling an RPG, and for me, that usually involves putting myself in the role of the protagonist or the player character. This helps me to see the world in a more immersive way, to tackle the riddles of choice, good and evil, from a more personal perspective. I named him Davian. I would like to point out that a character's height and weight are a factor in your hero's movement and climbing. Now, I wasn't aware of this during character creation, but I just found it interesting that a smaller and more agile character has an easier time climbing and sprinting than your thick boys. And to be honest, I'm struggling to think of another RPG where your hero's height and weight factor into anything outside of the realm of PvP. Our journey begins in the small fishing village of Cassodus. It seems to be a happy place as children play and the locals seem content with their lot in life. We spot what I'm assuming is a friend and share a moment, and that's when catastrophe strikes. The colossal red worm has come to Cassodus. The dragon is a menace that none in this village is prepared to handle, leaving death and destruction in its wake, sending guards and locals alike fleeing for their lives. We take up the discarded sword of a guard and confront the dragon. My sword does nothing to the thick hide of the beast, and it swats me aside with ease. My sword barely a splinter in the massive creature's hand. But then something strange happens. When all hope seems lost, the dragon begins to speak.
Io acquarata mesquirait. Acquarata de Dio mi. Mi esquarota quanto la pone. Nestesta, nesti, mi escurate et malaga.
The dragon's incantation has granted our hero the ability to understand it, and its message is clear. The dragon has offered a challenge. If we want our heart back, the dragon must be faced again. This is a fantastic scene, and I have to say that Dragon's Dogma is setting a pretty epic tone for the story moving forward. Now in full control of my hero, I'm allowed to choose a class to pursue, and although there are 9 total classes referred to in Dragon's Dogma as vocations, you are only allowed to choose from 3 at the start. The fighter is your classic sword and board character, standing at the forefront of conflict and a bastion of armor and swordsmanship. The strider is a more ranger rogue type hero, armed with archery and dual daggers. This hero takes on a more damage dealer role. And finally, the mage, a fantasy classic spellcaster. Robes and a staff are this hero's companions, and they focus on buffs, healing, and arcane damage. I decide to begin as a mage. From here, the game opens up into a sandbox action adventure with a similar walk and quack to many ARPGs. There are quests and tasks that offer experience for completing them, as well as loot and items to be discovered by those brave enough to explore the many dangers of Gransis. Walking near the city exit initiates a cutscene, where a mystical portal opens and a man appears, lifting his hand to show a glowing sigil upon his palm. The man's name is Rook, and he is what is known as a pawn. The pawns serve the Arisen, whom is said to have the will and leadership required to lead them. The pawns act as mercenaries in the world and are not considered alive nor possessing any amount of will on their own. They are a conduit to the Arisen's will and serve without question. At this point in the adventure, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about all of this, but we'll touch on pawns more as the adventure unfolds. For now, Rook joins my party. I met with a local healer of Cassidus. She needed a mixture of flowers to help heal the wounded of the dragon's attack. I offered to help, gathering 5 of the flowers during the day, and the final flower along the beach that only blooms at night. Although this quest is little more than a gather-fetch quest, I enjoy the fact that the day and night cycle of Gransis play a role in the world other than just what color the sky happens to be during any given time. Quests in Dragon's Dogma are pretty cookie cutter. Quest givers have a green marker above their head to indicate that they have a task that the player can help with. Once accepted, any NPC with a red marker above them has relevant information about how the quest can be pursued. It's not revolutionary by any means, but it serves the world well, and I had no issue finding or gathering information about the who's, what's, and where's I needed to be concerning any given task. The Duchy of Gransis also has message boards where quests are pinned for the player to select at their leisure. These quests seem to consist mostly of kill X amount of enemy and the occasional escort quest. I found myself seeking out message boards and eventually returning to them as I traveled the world, mostly because I'm an old school kind of gamer and enjoy a good grind quest, and the rewards were always a nice boost to my hero's coin purse. Something I found very interesting is the ability to miss quests. I love a game that doesn't insult your intelligence as a player or railroad you into doing every single thing for every single person in town. It's just unrealistic, and Dragon's Dogma has a lot of quests that can be easily missed. For me, this adds a degree of replayability to the game, and makes the world of Dragon's Dogma feel more realistic and, in turn, immersive. After delivering the herbs, I decided to explore the village of Cassidus, and discovered the local church. It was here that I met Elvar, and he bears grim news for Marin, another local of Cassidus. Marin's brother, Cortez, lost his life during the dragon attack. Elvar doesn't have the heart to tell his friend this grim news, so I offered to deliver Cortez's fate to Marin. Before heading out to find Marin, I have a chat with the local priest, Clemente. He is new to the village of Cassidus and has yet to commit the verses of the faith to memory. The book he keeps the words of the faith within has vanished, and he asks if I would help him find the missing tome. Right outside the church is a youth named Lewis, who immediately admits to having taken the priest's book, but he dropped it while fleeing the dragon attack. The church sits at the highest elevation of Cassidus, offering a great view of the village below, and the view itself is fantastic. It is here that I spot what looks to be a book, sitting on one of the rooftops below. I retrieve the book by descending to the rooftops and return the tome to its rightful owner, tell Marin of his brother's fate, and ease Elvar's guilt concerning the death of Cortez. These beginning quests serve 2 purposes. Number 1 is no glittery path is going to magically lead me to whatever it is my hero happens to be looking for. No, in Gransis, I will have to explore with my own eyes, and although there are NPCs willing to offer up knowledge concerning any given quest, it is up to me to do the searching. Now, some quests will circle the objective with an orange swirl, but for the most part, I found myself having to do the majority of an investigation. They also serve to teach the player that verticality is possible in Gransis. By the time I finish all of these tasks, nighttime has descended upon Cassidus, and I feel that I have exhausted every nook and cranny in the village that may contain treasure chests or valuable loot. Speaking of loot, I briefly want to cover the player's storage. Not the mechanic itself, because it's pretty cut and dry. The player has a storage space at any local inn that can be easily retrieved. What I want to touch on is that I had an assortment of items and gear already within my storage space. Some armor and a few consumables. I'm pretty sure this is stuff offered due to the version of the game that I own, but I'm not about to look the gift horse in the mouth, so I use what suits my class. One item in particular, though, I felt a little meh about using. A monocle that sold to a local merchant for an absurd amount of coin. This is not a challenge run, so I took the profits. I'm sure they'll come in handy as my journey continues. The reason I bring this up is because of any questions concerning my wealth that may arise within the comments. Okay, let's move on. I decide to take a room at the inn until morning. I'm not sure if enemies differ from day to night, but I wanted a good start to our hero's journey and decided to spend the coin and rest at the local inn. The journey to the encampment was short, and along the way I completed one of the message board tasks to kill rabbits. Kinda weird. My heat-seeking spell staff made this a pretty easy task. Also along the road were a few goblins, but the enchanted ring I had in my storage that vastly improved my Ingle or fire spell made quick work of them and saved the life of a traveling merchant named Reynard, who rewarded me with a cloak for my effort. Upon arriving at the encampment, a mystical voice resonated within my hero's mind, a summons to the Pawn Legion's gate. Right outside the Legion's gate is Quartermaster Ekbal. He offers services as not only an innkeep for the encampment, but also training. I use this opportunity to spend my discipline points from leveling up on some new spells. Leveling up in Dragon's Dogma seems pretty simple at first glance. You choose a class and gain experience until a new level is achieved. This is true, but what the game doesn't go out of its way to tell you is that each class in Dragon's Dogma offers different passive augments that are learned through class rank, not level. These passives can then be slotted regardless of class, and certain classes can benefit greatly from the augments of other classes. The best ways to gain levels is by doing quests and killing tougher enemies. This is not the best way to raise a hero's rank in any given class. A hero's rank and level are not on the same experience scale, meaning that if I wanted to rank up as a mage but level as a fighter, I would go and kill low experience enemies, and if I got close to leveling up, switch my class back to fighter for the level up, then back to mage and continue killing low experience critters, allowing my hero to gain ranks as a mage for any augments or passives I wanted, but never level up as one. This is a pretty deep leveling system, and I am by no means a worthy teacher on just how deep the rabbit hole of leveling and rank progression in Dragon's Dogma goes. There are a ton of videos on the best ways to level this class or that, and the usual most OP Assassin's Guide if it suits your fancy. I'm not interested in a perfect hero grind, but if you are, there are a lot of guides out there to help anyone interested in such shenanigans. The rift is a massive stone slab that is etched with glowing runes and looks awesome. The voice informs me that if I am to lead the Pawn Legion, I must prove the strength of my resolve, and I accept. It just so happens that a Cyclops attacks the encampment moments later. The Cyclops is a pretty easy fight due to the amount of guards that assist in the conflict. I am able to simply stand back and shower the beast with fire. With the Cyclops dead, I return to the stone rift. Forging an ally or main pawn drops the player back into character creation, with all the same bells and whistles used to forge the hero protagonist. For me, this was a pretty easy choice. I needed an ally who was not afraid of the thick of combat, a versatile warrior of both blade and bow. Although his stature is slim, his body bears the scars of an immortal life of conflict. I named him Owen, which means young warrior, and is associated with strength, nobility, and courage. He would serve as my right hand, a battle brother, and my shadow. As I learned more about the pawn system, the opening text kept itching in the back of my mind. In another place, in another life, another child of man blazes your path. I'm not sure just how deep the writer meant for this simple phrase to go, but I found myself feeling a certain sort of way when thinking that we are all in this together. Our pawns connect us as players. The experiences I have in the game can be shared through my pawn, enhancing the gameplay of another player, connecting us in this shared and yet different hero's journey. This in itself I find to be a rather intriguing online element. Through pawns, I can send gifts to the creator and rate the helpfulness or quality of their pawn. In turn, others can choose to take my pawn with them along their own journey and send gifts and thanks for the time they shared with my pawn. I really enjoy this element of Dragon's Dogma. It allows me to peek into the minds of other players and see what they consider a worthy companion, connecting our adventures through the rift and allowing the player to enhance their current team with the knowledge and skill of another player's ideal ally. A short cutscene plays, and the Pawn Legion is now at my beck and call, and Owen joins my team as a permanent ally, and I'm able to re-enter the rift to trim out my party as I see fit. Dragon's Dogma allows you to have a maximum party of 4, and it's a good idea to ensure that you have every area of combat covered. This is offered to the player by Sir Byrne, who runs the player through a training course to see if your party is up to snuff. I'm going to be honest, it's not the best training simulation, but it does inform the player that some enemies are stronger or weaker against different types of attacks, and that is a good idea to have a mixture of heroes within your group. After training and purchasing some equipment for Owen, I had a chat with Mercedes. She seems to be the woman in charge and offered free room and board for one night at the encampment. But my rest is interrupted as a massive hydra assaults the fort. My team rushes to action, and although my party consists of a good variety of heroes, this was a very difficult fight as a mage. My melee companions struggled to climb the beast to cleave off its head, and although my Grand Angle spell did solid damage to the creature, I began to see the limitations of not wielding a blade myself. The warrior pawn I had summoned got lost in the fray. Owen attempted to climb the beast, but was snatched up in the Hydra's jaws. It was actually Mercedes who pulled my party out of this mess and saved us from becoming a snake turd, tossing me an explosive barrel. Oh yeah, good old barrelmancy, truly an art of high sorcery. I was able to blast off one of the creature's heads, and thankfully it was enough to force the creature to flee. Mercedes offers praise, as do her soldiers, and requests that I aid in escorting the head to the Duke as a gift in Grand Soren, which is the capital of Gransis. After the Hydra debacle, Owen mentions heading back to Cassardis, and I'm inclined to agree. I wanted to check on the people there, and upon exiting the encampment, Elvar is waiting and questions the location of Kina and claims that she has gone missing. So I head back to Cassardis and speak with her father, Adaro. He believes that she has went to the Witchwood, a dark and foreboding forest, in search of a cure for my wound. Kina is brave, but no fighter. I decide to head to the Witchwood and see if she's okay. Along the way, I encounter a cavern of bandits, wolves, more bandits, and yet more wolves. Exploration in Dragon's Dogma and travel feels pretty good. These places are not a stone's throw away from one another, and it gives the player a sense of the vastness and dangers of traveling the roads. Enemies are numerous in certain areas, and the world is not sculpted to suit your level. Some enemies are well beyond your ability to defeat, forcing the player to flee. I really like this aspect in games. It makes the world feel more real. I am not a fan of games where the world adjusts its level to the player, leaving the player never feeling powerful. Dragon's Dogma does not cater to such nonsense. Wander off the beaten path too far, and a big bad will put you back on the path real fucking fast. Finally, I arrive at the Witchwood to find Kina lingering near its entrance. Kina came seeking the witch that lives within the forest that is said to understand the language of dragons. But Kina is afraid to brave the dark forest alone and asks if I will accompany her in the search for this witch. The forest is a maze of twist and unnatural fog, littered with wolves, goblins, and poisonous spiders. Navigating the fog can be alleviated by destroying ritualistic totems that seem to be the source of the unnatural fog, but this does little to aid in the disorienting effect this area can have at night. Eventually I came across a small cottage that is said to be the house of the witch, but inside is a young girl named Celine. She says that the old witch was her grandmother, and that she has passed away. Her gran warned her of the dragons, and that the faith knows of the dragons and cloaks the truth, and those who seek the truth outside the faith are branded a heretic. Celine's grandmother kept the truth from Celine to keep her safe from the faith, and those who would brand her as a witch or hunt her, leaving the faith as our next step in discovering this truth. I decide to rest at the inn for the night, and Pablos the innkeep speaks of a thief that has been plaguing the village at night. I agree to help capture this brigand the following night after I have spoken with the local shop owners. The following morning, Owen returns from adventuring with other players and a few consumable gifts. Upon heading downstairs, I meet Madeline, a wayfaring merchant who wants to be escorted to the encampment and has dreams of opening a shop in Grand Soren. I decide to help her and guide her to the encampment. Madeline is slow and stops to sift through the trash multiple times during her escort, but we eventually arrive at the encampment. She is grateful, but begs for coin as the road is long and her funds are low. I'm feeling charitable and give her 1,000 gold to help her get her new venture started. After returning to Cassardis, I have a quick chat with the local merchants, and Pablos devises a plan to catch the crook. It's a crappy plan, of little more than chase the thief and try to grab him. Thankfully, I was able to outsmart the thief and corner him in a nearby alley. Near the gates of town is the local guard pole. He is ashamed of his cowardice when the dragon attacked and proclaims that he hid in the well when the worm sieged Cassardis. But while he was down there, he heard strange sounds and monstrous growls. He is afraid that the village will be attacked again and that he will be blamed for leading even more monsters to the village, so I offer to investigate the depths in his stead. The well is a hive of rats, bats, and vipers, all of which are easy prey for my team. But at the bottom of the well's depths is a nest of saurians, lizard men armed with spears and a poisonous breath weapon. They are a formidable foe, but I am able to triumph over the beast by remaining on the high ground while pummeling them with fire and lightning, while Owen leads the team below and engages them in melee. It's a hard-fought victory, but Cassius is safe once again. Pole is relieved that the threat is now quashed and thanks my team for destroying the saurians, claiming that he will endeavor to become a better guardsman. With Cassius safe once again, I decide it's time to meet up with Mercedes and escort the Hydra head to the capital. The road to Mercedes is rife with bandits and wolves, but my team endures and arrives at the meeting point. The journey to Grand Soren is a pretty long escort quest, and again I marvel at the distance between locations, giving the journey from one location to the next a real sense of adventure. Now, I'm sure that hoofing it back and forth from Cassius to Grand Soren can become tedious after the fourth or fifth time, but I like walking places in RPGs. It gives me a greater sense of realism within the world, and it allows me additional opportunities to discover things I may have missed the first time. Now, Dragon's Dogma does have a fast travel system with port keys and rift stones, but at this point in the adventure I don't have access to them, but later I'll be able to set up a network of travel points to ease some of the burdens of travel. For now, we walk. Harpies litter the canyon pass and must be brought down with ranged attacks or spells before my team can dispatch them. My current team is comprised of 2 archers and 2 mages, so this is pretty easy work. But again, I can see the difficulty that a team of swordsmen could have during this leg of the adventure. Bandits house a small shed along the pass and have set up falling rock traps, but they are no match for our spells, blades, and arrows. Goblins have overrun the gates leading to Grand Soren, and they too feel the weight of our valor and are dispatched with little effort. I want to take just a moment here to thank someone, somewhere out there in the ether of internet space. A hero created Legolas as their main pawn. He is a ranger, and he is fantastic. Thank you. Upon arriving at Grand Soren, Mercedes thanks us for our help and suggests that we sojourn in the capital for a time, and leaves to deliver the Hydra's head. It is here that a man named Mason approaches me and introduces himself. He seems intrigued by the Arisen and offers me advice. To learn more about the fate or destiny of the Arisen, I should learn more about the pawns, for our fates are intertwined. He says that the pawns have a base of operation within Grand Soren, and that is where my search should begin. I decide to do some sojourning and discover the inn where I can change my class or vocation. This unlocks the remaining classes to the player. Mage has been fun, but I can see its limitations and want to enhance my magical capabilities, and decide to pursue the magic archer profession, arming my hero with arcane arrows and dual blades or a staff. This feels like my kind of versatility. I keep Owen as a strider for now, swift and dependable. Shortly after, I discover the Black Cat, a black market shop that deals in relics and forgeries, offering the player the ability to forge fake items or duplicates. Interesting indeed. I decide that this is a nice place to spend some of my massive inheritance from selling the monocle and purchase the Militant Dove, a magical bow to assist me in the pursuit of arcane archery, and some gear from Caxton at the local smithy.
The master works all, you can't go wrong.
In the main market square, I encounter Stefan. He is seeking an arcane book called Salamet's Grimoire. The book is fabled to increase the skill of any mage who has the tome within their possession. He doesn't offer a reward and claims that we can discuss such matters if I can locate the book. A little investigation into the matter informs me that the book is more than likely in the hands of bandits. For now, I move on. The city of Grand Soren is pretty big, with rooftop access, an aqueduct, and is separated into districts. The city has great verticality and scope. One thing that Dragon's Dogma does very well is atmosphere. The music serves as a backdrop to the different locations, and I often find myself unaware that the music had even changed, and this is a good thing. I also want to take a moment to point out that the voice acting, writing, and the use of language in Dragon's Dogma. The populace of Gransis sounds like they are from Gransis. Their voices don't sound like they were resonating in my skull from being recorded in a soundproof studio. They sound like they are in a tavern or on a busy street. It meshes well with the background, and their use of language is spot on. It's easy to tell the NPCs who have traveled from abroad compared to the distinct dialect of the locals.
'Tis a relief in all you're doing, cuz. Here, I owe you at least this much for all you've done.
Friend,
Pray, sojourn in the capital a while. To the castle mains! Step lively!
Fortune smiles upon me. Well met, Sir Edison.
This adds immersion and world building to an RPG, and I love it. After doing some more exploration, I decide to head to the Pawns Guild and introduce myself to Barnaby. He is the steward of the guild and has a request. The Pawn Guild rests on top of a place known as the Everfall. The pawns have a connection to this place and act not only as its custodians but also its guardians. A strange aura has been noticed within the depths of the Everfall. Barnaby is unaware if this presence is evil and requests that I investigate. He says that the presence arrived shortly after the dragon appeared and he believes they may be connected. The Everfall itself is a massive spiral walkway that descends into the depths below. The place is littered with bats and undead that crawl from the earth. These enemies are resistant to physical damage, but weak against both fire and holy magic. Almost halfway down is an ogre. One of my pawns says that they are excited by females and will target them first. This is a nice touch to enemy behavior. I mean, I can't really recall a bad guy in a video game that reacts to a player differently based on gender. This is an interesting concept, and I wish it was present in other games, like sirens that focus on charming male characters to turn on their companions, or a Gorgon Medusa that stony gaze only works on men, giving female heroes an advantage, and in our current example, horny ogres that try to capture females. It would add a touch more to an RPG than boobs or no boobs being the only distinguishing feature. Food for thought, developers. At the bottom of the Everfall is a glowing basin. Within is a port key which I collect. Upon interacting with the device, snake-like tendrils begin to emerge from the ground, and regardless of effort, I am urged by Owen to flee. It's a close call and I exhaust every stamina item in my possession to escape. Barnaby believes this light at the bottom is of ill intent, and knows very little of the aberration that attacked us in the depths of the Everfall, but has every intention to redouble the pawn's effort to deal with whatever this new threat may be. Upon leaving the Pawn Guild, I am approached by Sir Duncan, who commends us on delivering the Hydra's head to Grand Soren. The Duke has issued a worm-hunting license to my group, granting a discount at the local shops and the Duke's blessing to hunt the dragon. Duncan informs me that Sir Maximilian is in charge of preparations to slay the dragon, and that when I am ready to receive any orders, they will be from him. I decided to trek back to Cassardis. Along the way, I encountered a group of bandits assaulting a man named Roland. He claims that the brigands took his arcane tome, the fabled Salamet's grimoire. He was able to identify the rogues as southern bandits, giving me another clue as to where my search for the book should continue. Real quick, I want to cover the difficulty of Dragon's Dogma. The game does a great job of making the player feel powerful as you progress, gaining discipline and new abilities. This made me get a little too cocky when encountering some of the southern bandits. I was winning the encounter and I got a little too close to one of the bandits who was able to drop me in just 2 swings of his sword. Enemies in Dragon's Dogma do not pull punches. You are not invincible, and one arrogant mistake can send you back to the loading screen in a hurry. The game does a great job of offering advice through the pawns at your side. They will often, and I mean often, tell you that party variety, readiness, and overall preparation for conflict is important, even as far as telling you that if you begin to lose a fight or your tactics seem inefficient, that it is okay to run away. I like it when a game doesn't hold your hand and babysit your health bar. Swords and spells are just as dangerous in the hands of the enemy as they are in yours. I returned to Cassardis and placed a port crystal I had found in the Everfall right outside. Port crystals are a limited resource, offering the player the ability to use fairy stones to travel great distances through the rift to any location they have placed a port crystal. By default, the player is able to travel to the portal at the Pawns Guild within Grand Soren and Cassardis, which I didn't realize until I got there. Any other location requires that the player visit them and place a port crystal. Port crystals themselves can be picked back up and relocated if necessary, and fairy stones are consumed upon use. Although with the Dark Arisen version of the game, I discovered an unlimited fairy stone within my storage at Grand Soren. I'm not sure how I feel about giving the player an unlimited fast travel item just because they have a different version of the game, but I guess walking everywhere isn't for everyone. While in Cassardis, I decided to check in on the locals. Marin approached me and asked if I had seen Valmiro. Marin is concerned about him due to his adventurous nature and lack of common sense. He fears the boy will get himself into trouble if left unchecked, and I agree to help find the boy. Valmiro is a pain in the ass. I save the boy from sand on the beach right outside of Cassius, giving him a healing herb. He is thankful and runs off towards the encampment, where I save him yet again from a normal fucking tree by giving him 2 healing herbs. He then decides that the Witchwood is the place to be, and yet again I discover the boy down for the count having been bested by a dirt road, and save him by giving him 3 healing herbs. Valmiro decides that the life of adventure is not for him and swears he will return home to Cassius and limit his adventures to the confines of town. Good call, kid. Marin is grateful to have the village idiot back and thanks me for saving the boy. Marin, you may want to put a bell on that fucking nerd. I'm just saying. With the people of Cassius safe once more, I ferry stone back to Grand Soren, where I encounter Austin. He is a local blacksmith and is grieving over the recent death of his son. His son was born with a weak heart, and Austin spent his life attempting to acquire 3 wakestone shards that once combined will create an item capable of restoring life to the dead. Austin only managed to gather 2 of the shards before his son passed and offers them to me. His hope is that I may find a 3rd on my travels, and I agree to keep an eye out for any more. While exploring the city, I encounter a man named Fornival. He is looking to evict a local family from his property because he wants to sell the land, but doesn't want to go through all the paperwork required to do so and requests that I ask them to leave without incident. I agree because maybe they are bad tenants and Fornival is looking to consolidate his wealth due to the dragon's return. This couldn't be further from the fucking truth. Fornival is just a jackass, and I'm forced to convince a father, mother, and their son that leaving is in their best interest. This is accomplished by giving the mother an in-game day to think things over and literally chasing down a kid and grabbing him, then paying off the moving expenses for 30,000 gold. Fornival reimburses me by paying me 40,000 gold for a job well done. The only upside to discovering this quest is that Fornival sells rare items, and just so happens to have a Wakestone shard for sale, which I use to revive Austin's dead son. Silver linings, I suppose. After washing my hands of that bullshit, I encounter Mason, the man I first met upon arriving in Grand Soren. He appears to be duking it out with another local, and simply approaching them and engaging in conversations ends whatever their issue may have been. Mason speaks in riddles about crows bringing bad tidings and work to be done. He mentions Salvation, which, I'm going to be honest here, I didn't realize was an organization until much later in my adventure. He says that a shadowy figure has been seen leaving the castle and requests that I follow them, but not engage. Mason simply wants information. I love a good sleuth mission, so I agree to help. Shadowing Salvation's agent requires that the player visit the Noble District at night. Again, I like it when a game's day and night cycle play into portions of the game. Following the armored man is pretty easy and leads to a scene between him and Madeline. Although Madeline is very flirtatious with the man, he is having none of her bullshit and collects a scrap of paper and pays her with a small pouch of coin. Returning to R. Smith, the local tavern keep offers no more information on exactly what Mason wanted from this encounter, other than who the agent of Salvation was. But the quest is enough to grant another level, so I guess I'll just have to wait and see. From here, I decide to pursue Salamet's grimoire and ferry stone back to Cassius to begin my exploration of these southern bandits. Upon entering the city, I hear the cries of a man coming from the sewer, so I descend to investigate. Rorik is a local who was seeking a secluded place to have a drink. While enjoying his booze, he began to hear strange noises from further in. I tell him to sit tight and that I will deal with whatever lurks under Cassius. More Saurians have nested under the village and have now begun to use it as a spawning ground for their young. Upon destroying the eggs, a massive Saurian appears and I am forced to put the creature down. I really like how revisiting areas in Dragon's Dogma has led to further adventure. This well was covered during my initial time in Cassius. Then we discovered a guard had been hiding down there during the dragon attack. He heard strange noises and we fought off Saurians. Returning later reveals that the Saurians have returned and now desire the sewer as their home and nesting grounds. forcing the player to fight them off a second time and kill their leader. It's not the greatest of stories, but it makes sense in universe, and I like it when there are scraps of logic in a game's quest development. With Cassardus safe yet again, man, I'm starting to think that this little fishing village needs like a full-time vigilante. Anyway, I spend the night at the inn to have a fresh start for my book hunt come morning. The southern bandits litter the roads and have a stronghold in their possession. Fighting to this location forced me to rely more heavily on my companions. My magic arrows spelled death for the weaker bandits, but I might as well have been firing nerf rounds at the shield-wielding brigands. I'm not sure if there is a peaceful way to collect Salaman's grimoire, because talking to the bandit chief seems pointless. He is not interested in trading and even says,
Aye, the grimoire is here with me. Sadly, I've no mind to give it up, nor do I have want of your coin. Now, if there were aught I wanted, and gold had failed, I would next try steel. Well, have you the metal, sir?
Well, I mean, he asked for it, so I unleash my allies and we send some bandits back to the respawn. The book is located at the top of a crumbling structure in a gilded chest. All that's left is to head back to Stefan and deliver the tome. Now, after collecting the book, one of my companions mentioned that if only there were 2 copies of the book, meaning that I could probably have a fake made at the Black Cat and deliver the fake to Stefan. But I have no need for a magic book, and as far as I can tell, having it in my inventory isn't making me better at magic, so I give Stefan the real deal. West of Gran Soren, I encountered a traveling merchant named Alan. He had intended to use a quarry passage as a shortcut through the mountains to the south, but the gates had been locked and the caves now teemed with monsters. I offered to clear the passage and release the gates. Inside the cavern was a nest of 3 ogres. At this level, they were a difficult fight, but my pawns were well trained and supporting them with arcane arrows saw us through to victory. Alan was relieved to have the trade route open again and rewarded my group with some coin for our efforts. Real quick, I want to touch on exploration in Gransis. Exploring the countryside and wild places of the world feels good, and although there isn't a treasure chest around every bend, the land feels real. Goblins and bandits stalk the highways, saurians have nests along the waterways, and large monsters prowl the deepest untamed locations of Gransis. There is a feeling of caution to exploring the land, as harpies lay in wait in the trees, chimera stalk the deep forest, and even dragons can be encountered where civilization has yet to take root. Dragon's Dogma does an amazing job at making their world immersive. The biome, the culture, and wildlife of natural resources fit well into the narrative that Dragon's Dogma is selling. While exploring, I came across a dragon, and although it was not the beast responsible for my condition, it was no less fierce. Bringing this creature down was awesome. My ally shouting out commands and leaping upon the beast as I rained down arrows from afar. To finally end the conflict with a well-placed shot to its exposed heart was combat fun I have not had in a video game for quite some time. The boss encounters of Dragon's Dogma are reason enough to spend $30 this game currently costs, and I have to say that this level of combat is way beyond the time for a 2012 video game. Which brings me to enhancement and upgrading equipment. Up until the dragon fight, I hadn't upgraded or enhanced much of my gear. This is typically done at a merchant and requires both gold and whatever upgrade material the specific item required. Each item has a base of 3 stars of upgrade. You can skip the first 2 stars if you simply seek out the last item required to save some gold. And as far as I can tell, there is no reason to purchase all 3 levels. What I didn't know was that upon killing a dragon, there is a chance that some of your gear will become dragon forged, surpassing the 3 stars the item normally has. This is an awesome feature, as if in the process of battling the dragon, its blood and death act as a catalyst to forging better equipment. After defeating the smaller dragon, I felt satisfied with my exploration and decided to head back to Gran Soren to see if there was more I could do to help the people. Fornival requested that I babysit his daughter for a day as he had trade business to deal with. His daughter, Simone, is the typical snobbish nobleman child. She is accustomed to having her way and delights in having the Arisen as her servant for a day. Escorting her is a trial in patience. She moves slowly, wants to play hide and seek, needs you to fetch her some water, and finally wants to race. It just so happens that if you manage to do all of this without drawing your weapons, scaring or bumping her in any way, have a flask of water handy, and let her win the race, she will reward the Arisen with a golden idol. This is a quest item that can be missed and also offers the Arisen a big discount at the shops as long as it's in your possession. So naturally, I decided to make a forgery of one. Sir Maximilian Eisenstern is the captain of the Worm Hunt. He offers tasks related to understanding and facing the dragon. He has 4 tasks to choose from, but only requires that the Arisen finish 2 of them to further the plot. I decided to do all of them. The first task was to decipher a stone slate. It is written in dragon speak, and the Duke wants it translated. I spoke with a few of the locals. The merchant at the Black Cat was able to learn that it was a cipher. Finally, it was Marin, a messenger in Gransis, that said perhaps the answers I sought could be found at Hillfigure Knoll, due to the likeness of the drawing on the slate has to the effigy of the knoll. The northern road suffers from bandits, saurians, snow harpies, and direwolves. Even a cyclops patrols these roads, making the trip a dangerous one for the unwary traveler. Upon arriving at the knoll, I met with a curious man sitting on top the Stonehenge-like structure.
Him who knows that I know what he seeks to know, knows it well, while he who knows not what I know, or know not.
The man's words strike at my chest where the dragon did me dirty, and another man appears, claiming to have also been forged by the dragon, and that he is the person I seek. The dragon forged appears to have been an Arisen once long ago. His arms are blackened, and the man I encountered initially seems to have been his pawn, known only as the Fool. The ancient Arisen, whose name is simply Dragon Forged, refers to me as the newest link in the grand chain. I'm not entirely sure what he means by this, but I can assume that this curse of dragon and Arisen have played out more than once over the centuries. Dragonforge claims to be responsible for the slate and that its meaning is nothing. It is simply a tool used to draw any Arisen to him, and that only a true Arisen can see him. I'm guessing that this is to serve as confirmation that I'm truly an Arisen, the proof being that I can see the Dragon Forged. This is wafer-thin proof as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not truly convinced that this is the bottom of the subject. It is worth noting that there is a gather spot at the very tip of the spear outside upon the human effigy. The item is a pair of daggers that once served as spear tips. Now, loot locations are not the point of this video, but I'm inclined to believe that the spearman is in fact a representation of the Dragon Forged, the tips that now serve as daggers having been shattered, forcing the Dragon Forged to either engage the beast bare-handed or with the daggers, leading to the blackening scars upon his arms. But that's just speculation on my part. Anyway, having nothing further to go on, I return to Grand Soren and Sir Maximilian. Max thinks that keeping tabs on the Dragonforge periodically is a wise plan, and once again offers another task. I decide to clear the Goblin Fortress. The Shadow Fort is located in the south, and the Duke considers it a strategic stronghold. During its repair, the keep was waylaid by goblins who now reside there. Maximilian wants me to aid in reclaiming the stronghold and lead the envoy of knights the Duke has dispatched. Reclaiming the Shadow Fort is a tough fight. Goblins, hobgoblins, and 3 cyclops stand in the Arisen's way, and the goblins have taken control over ballista that launch exploding bolts. Opening the main gate allows the Knights of Gransis in, and the brawl ensues within the main courtyard. Waves of goblins assault the troops, and I lead my team to the upper levels to dispatch the ballista and another cyclops, finally confronting the goblin leader. The goblin leader is no match for my team and proclaims that the coming of the dragon spells death for all humanity, and that our victory here is meaningless, then flees into the tunnels below. I attempt to give chase, but am blocked by a massive gate that I can't figure out how to open. So I return to Grand Soren and report to Sir Maximilian. He offers praise for reclaiming the fortress and is relieved to have southern Gransis back under the Duke's control. Max wastes no time in offering my next task. A group of priests seek knowledge about the worm and have set out to investigate an ancient temple, but it has become overrun with monsters, and the church has requested my party's aid in the matter. Upon leaving the city, a wagon is being attacked by goblins, and I rush in to help. Suddenly, a massive griffin smashes into the wagon. I manage to get in a few shots, but the creature flies off before any significant damage can be dealt. This was awesome. I was all, oh geez, more goblins, what will I ever do? Then boom, Big Bird swooped in and jump scared the shit out of me. Well played, Dragon's Dogma. Well played indeed. The temple resides behind a waterfall, and standing outside is a priest named Haslet. He is afraid to enter the temple and refuses to follow his friend Jean inside. He is concerned with Jean's well-being and asks if I will check on him. The temple is flooded, making certain areas not accessible until the water can be drained. Within, Saurians lay in wait. I really like how some of the Saurians can cloak and cling to walls and ceilings like the Predator. It's a pretty cool ambush tactic. After crossing the main chamber, I discover Jean, or what's left of him rather, and dispatch justice upon his killer. The Water Temple is a very fun dungeon. Undead skeletons and skeletal mages lurk in the lower levels once the water has been drained, and offers verticality as opposed to a more linear dungeon. After clearing the place of evil, I return to Haslet to deliver the news that Jean is dead. Haslet wants to finish Jean's work and asks if I can collect 5 stone tablets from within. This felt fucking tedious, and could have easily been a part of the initial quest. Discover Jean's fate and gather clues about the worm. The slates are very heavy, and I'm forced to split them up amongst my party to remain unencumbered. With the slates recovered, Haslet claims that the Faith will see them translated, and to report our success to Sir Maximilian, so I guess it's back to Grand Sorin.
That fear of the worm should drive a man to die in pursuit of old stones. I forget myself.
Max is glad to have the job done, but seems a little disappointed with the idea of good men dying in the pursuit of old stones. Regardless, he is glad to have the task complete and is eager to send me on the final task. Seeking salvation is a more subtle task. The group is referred to as heretics who worship the dragon and view the creature as a deity of omen, delighting in the dragon's return and the perdition it brings. All roads point to Mason. He asks that we help him in his investigation to bring down salvation, offering a token that is used amongst its members so that maybe I can persuade someone to tell me the group's location. I was a little disappointed to discover that a guard was a member of this group, and after a brief conversation, discovered that the meeting of salvation is taking place in the catacombs. The catacombs is located southwest of Hillfigure Knoll. The journey is rife with direwolves, goblins, and cyclops. The catacombs itself is entered through a stone mausoleum. The place is cramped and dark. Undead lurk within, but my team is able to endure. Again, the dungeon design is fantastic. The lighting, or lack thereof, and the ambient murmurings of undead within drips with atmosphere. Nearing the bottom, I hear the sounds of a man preaching.
Unto all things, death and chaos!
Elysian is flanked by a knight we followed back in Grand Sorin, and he is holding a cultist pep rally. I make a little too much noise and interrupt their cult shit. Elysian responds by summoning the dead to cover his escape. Chasing after Elysian leads to Mason, who is also within the catacombs, and he has managed to capture one of the acolytes. Mason has already bled the man for information, but believes the man will cause trouble if left alive, but leaves that choice to me. The prisoner begs for his life, offering gold and indulgences, claiming that none shall survive the dragon's fire, and that we should wait out the end as wealthy men, that I should see reason, and that surely my love of coin outweighs my conviction. I bury my dagger in his fucking chest. Now, I can see how a lot of people would consider killing this man an evil act. I'm gonna be honest, I don't care. This man is a worm, and if he is willing to break so easily at just the sight of the Arisen, there is no way he won't spill his sniveling guts to Elysian or the knight in his service, and they will more than likely kill him anyway. At least I made it quick. Mason applauds my resolve and says he will be in touch, and that we will rout this skulk of foxes together, and turns to leave. Upon returning to Sir Maximilian, he laments that Salvation's leader managed to escape, and intends to redouble the guard's effort in keeping the city safe. He also believes that as the Arisen, I will likely be targeted by Salvation in the future, and advises caution. The only issue I have with this quest is not having the option to inform Max that there are guards on the Salvation payroll, and that an internal investigation may be in order. With all the Duke's tasks completed, Sir Maximilian offers me the Duke's invitation to court. It's here that the game tells me through Max that any and all unfinished quests will be cancelled if I proceed. I had spent hours scouring the villages of Cassardis and the capital Grand Soren, and a fair bit of exploration, so I felt comfortable with proceeding. Pawns are not permitted in on-castle ground, and I was forced to go it alone. The castle is sturdy and well maintained, with music of reverence playing in the backdrop. The area offers a sense of majesty. This initial impression was short-lived, as I was introduced to the Duke's jester and thrust before the court. The nobles and the knights did not perceive me as a fabled hero come to rid them of the dragon threat. No, to them I was a joke to be teased and the fisherman knight.
I fear your crown outshines my own. By my command, every road in Gransis shall be open to you henceforth as a member of the Worm Hunt. May your efforts help deliver us from the shadow of the dragon. As long as that damnable beast draws breath, I'll fain accept any help on offer. All right.
Regardless, the Duke offered me a knighthood and was willing to accept me as an ally to the cause of defeating the dragon. I'm gonna be honest here, up until this point, I felt a sense of duty in slaying the dragon, paired with my desire to win back my heart. But this one scene turned duty on its head. My duty was to the people of Gransis, to the pawns at my side, and to win back my life. This Duke Edmund Dragonsbane and his plan can kiss my heartless ass. While exploring the castle grounds, I met Fatal, a vassal in the Duke's court, whom requested to speak with me privately at night. I told him I would find him later. Upon leaving the castle, I met Eleanor, betrothed to Duke Dragonsbane. She seemed nice and kind of quick to become smitten for a lady that's promised to another man. I bid her good day and left. At the castle's exit, I was stopped by Sir Albert and Chamberlain Aldous. Although Aldous seemed concerned with the mental health of his duke, he said that I will receive my tasks from him from now on, and that they come directly from the Duke himself. Upon leaving the castle, a whole mess of side quests and adventures become available to the player. Now, I want to point out that quests in Dragon's Dogma wait for no man. Many of the quests are easily missed and require the player to explore and return to people they have helped in the past. I want to explore all of Gransis before proceeding with the main story. Now, there is definitely a distinct possibility that I missed some quests, but these are the ones that I found. Caxton the blacksmith spoke of a legendary dealer who would only offer their wares to merchants in possession of an idol. I had forged 2 copies of the golden effigy, one by completing Simone's escort quest, and decided to give him the real one, keeping the forgery with me to possibly maintain a discount at shops. This increased his inventory, offering more powerful equipment to me and Owen. At the central fountain of Grand Soren, I overheard some villagers speaking of a witch and that the Duke had already sent men to deal with her. This conversation automatically offered the quest Witch Hunt. I wasn't about to let any harm come to Celine, so I made my way to the Witchwood. Upon leaving Grand Soren, I spoke with Guardsman Rickard. He spoke of a nameless threat that sought to do me harm and that I should take care upon the road. This showed a cutscene of a group of individuals looking out from the countryside towards Grand Soren, and I was given the Nameless Terror quest, but we're gonna cover that later. I made for the Witchwood with all haste. Upon arriving at Celine's home, an angry mob was already there, threatening to burn the witch in her hut. Before I could intervene, a golem emerged from her garden, sending the mob fleeing for their lives. Glowing purple discs covered its granite frame and magically infused with ill intent. I was forced to engage the creature. This is a very powerful enemy. The golem's attacks are slow, but threaten to send any non-fighter to the loading screen with a single hit. The golem is also very resistant, if not immune to magical assault, because my arcane bow was about as effective as a fucking Nerf gun, forcing Owen and I to climb upon the creature and target the discs with our daggers. With the golem dead, a pathway under Celine's house is revealed. Following it leads to another port crystal and a lengthy path that ends with Celine standing next to a ghostly figure, who resembles an elderly Celine. The ghost is Sophia, a once arisen, and Celine her pawn from long ago. Sophia says that given enough time, an arisen's pawn will assume the very form of their arisen. Sophia calls this the bestowal of spirit. Upon their death, an arisen can transfer their soul, or a fragment of it, to their pawn, giving them the life of a human. Doing so removes their pawn print and offers them the will and spirit to pursue a life of their own. This is why the Fool looks almost identical to the Dragonforged, but the Dragonforged still clings to life, so the Fool remains a pawn. This is a very interesting piece of lore, and although I'm not 100% sure how it all works, this endless cycle of death and rebirth, the dialogue of links in the chain and an eternal ring are starting to make some sort of sense. And I can really appreciate the depth Dragon's Dogma has in its world building and lore, and this is a very missable quest. Had I not lingered by the fountain because one guy slipped in a word about a witch that caught my attention and was forced to relocate because the town crier is a broken fucking record dialed to 11.
And what of the pending contest?
You know of the witch that lives in those woods?
I know a witch. What witch? Celine?
His Grace, Duke Edmund as himself.
Dude, shut the fuck up. I would have missed this entirely. This is a fantastic game design in my opinion, and makes me wonder and maybe worry a little as to any clues I may have missed on my journey through Gransis. But at least Celine is safe, and I was armed with another clue as to the history of the Arisen. Celine requests to lodge in my home back in Castardis, where she wanted a new beginning to her now human life. I agree and decide to return to Castardis with her to ensure all is well in my hometown. Upon arriving in Castardis, I find Valmiro staring out over the ocean. He seeks to leave Gransis, but his initial fumblings have made him more of a mind to be prepared for his journey. Valmiro requests that I aid him in collecting the items he will need for this journey, and although I think he should be writing a book on tales of the biggest dumbass adventurer, I decide to help. Valmiro requires 3 items from me to begin this journey: healing items, a light source, and food. This sounds simple enough, and collecting a potent healing herb and a lantern were easy. The food is where this quest becomes a pain in the ass. Castardis is a fishing village after all, so I brought him an assortment of fish. This wasn't what he wanted. I traveled to Grand Soren in search of more meats, because one of my pawns said that meat is best right before it goes rotten. So I hunted beast and soured their meat. After way too damn long of trying to figure this out on my own, I went to the wiki and discovered that sour ambrosial meat is what Valmiro needs to complete his quest. This meat is easily located in the quarry where the first ogre is encountered by breaking large boxes, and to be honest, I probably would have completed the game with this quest failed if not for looking it up online. So a quick and heartfelt thank you I feel is in order to the folks over at the wiki and the Dragon's Dogma community for all their hard work on this game. Thank you for unraveling the mystery of Valmiro's meat. Having delivered all 3 of the items, Valmiro was ready to set sail. All that was left was to help him load his boat and wish him farewell. Valmiro asked to share a drink on the beach before his departure. I like a stout beer as much as the next guy, so I accepted. Together we watched the sunrise, and I couldn't help but feel kind of a fatherly connection to this young man. I have teenagers with lofty dreams in my home, and 2 sons that are already out of the house to pursue happiness beyond the shielding wing of mom and dad. Although Valmiro is a pain in the ass, it was a nice scene. Good luck, kid. That same morning, I discovered a young boy wandering the streets of Cassardis searching for his father. The boy is Tomlin, and his father has gone missing, and the boy is reasonably at his wits' end in fear for his papa. Tomlin's dad is a gardener within the Duke's castle, and one day Tomlin awoke to find his dad had vanished. Tomlin has been searching for over a week and asked me to aid in his search. I begin my search in Grand Soren, and a local guard informs me that a traitor has recently been taken into the dungeon and awaits there for interrogation. For this, I'll need some skeleton keys and am able to craft them at the inn by managing my storage. Crafting in Dragon's Dogma is pretty straightforward. Selecting an item to combine will offer any other items you may have in your storage or possession to create a final product. I have a looting problem, so making the keys was pretty easy. Entering the dungeon and freeing Tomlin's father Ansel is way fucking easier than I had expected a jailbreak to be. The guards do not care that I am there, and with 2 skeleton keys, I'm able to unlock his cell and the cell across the hall, which has a big fat gaping tunnel to escape the castle grounds from. The way is barred by rats, bats, and snakes that need to be removed before Ansel will follow. But upon exiting the tunnel, I am reunited with my team and Tomlin, his father. I'm gonna assume that my pawns went and collected the boy and brought him to meet us here just to clean this story up a little bit. With that, the two exit the city, completing the quest. It had been a while since I spoke with Sir Maximilian, so I decided to check in on him, and he just so happened to have a quest. Max is still seeking clues on the organization's salvation, and now has heard a rumor that they are using the undead to bolster their forces. He knows that they are holding meetings within Grand Soren and asks if I will spy on that meeting. The meeting is a conversation between 2 men held at night in the lower part of the city. They speak about sowing chaos in the wake of the dragon and the use of the undead. I intervene in their meeting and force one of the men to hand over a second key to the catacombs. With the knowledge that Salvation plans to rise an undead army and have reestablished themselves within the catacombs, my path is clear. As before, the crypts are littered with undead and a few spirits, but my party is able to endure the assault and reach a massive stone door that has 5 empty slots. Along the way, I encounter the Salvation member who I interrogated in the streets of Grand Soren. He begs for me to put a stop to this madness. I agree, and kill him for his part in the lives lost to this necromancy. The door requires 5 green orbs to open that are littered throughout the crypts within the coffins of the dead. Many of them are trapped with undead and a curse spell that lowers your hero's combat ability, but my mage pawn Robin is able to cure the effect. After finding 5 Dragon Balls, I'm able to open the massive stone door. I'm not really sure if the orb door was a good design call. I mean, it kind of makes Salvation look stupid. That's like being inside your house while it's locked and leaving the house key on the porch. But whatever. The door looks cool, I suppose. The Salvation Necromancer Ballsack thinks I will make a wonderful member to his undead army, and after giving him a moment of exposition, I put a lightning arrow through his face and a stop to his stupid undead shenanigans. Sir Maximilian is relieved to have the threat ended and offers thanks for killing the Necromancer and his minions. He speaks of Salvation recruiting simply for the sake of turning their own into undead, and I'm glad I was able to put a stop to this madness. Back within Grand Soren, I decided to check in on the merchants and do a bit of shopping. Madeline was after an idol similar to the one I had given to Caxton. I agreed to help her find one, but didn't want to give her the golden forgery. I had 2 bronze idols from visiting the Witchwood and the Dragon Forged, but there had to be a silver one, right? I searched high and low for a silver idol. Checking houses in both Grand Soren and Cassardis, I revisited the crypt, the quarry, and even began to search further north. It was at the Shadow Fort where I finally discovered the idol. Now, to be honest, I didn't realize this until later, but upon entering the caves where the goblin leader fled, the massive door was now open, and within awaited a Cyclops. I felled the beast and received the Quest Complete award, which I simply assumed was another Slay Your Enemies quest that automatically was bestowed upon encountering difficult enemies. Upon looking it up after the fact, with the idol in my inventory, mind you, I learned this is actually a bounty received from the Pawn Guild board called Put the Eye Out. Completing the bounty automatically gives the silver idol. With the idol in hand, I returned to Madeline and offered it to her. She was her usual self that makes my skin cringe, but I was happy for the reward and moved on. While in Grand Soren, I decided to see what Fadel wanted to speak with me about. He was the guy during the Come to Court quest who wanted me to wait until nightfall to speak of important matters. This quest warns the player that sneaking around the castle at night is forbidden and that I could be thrown in jail if caught. I love a good stealth quest, but here is one of Dragon's Dogma's shortcomings. The game doesn't have a stealth mechanic outside the assassin class, which allows the player to turn invisible. Finding Fatal isn't difficult by any means, but I'm just not a fan of games trying to throw in a stealth quest using the generic stay out of sight recommendation while wasting around the shadows. Regardless, Fatal needs help recovering sensitive paperwork that he lost during its transportation to Grand Soren. He claims that monsters attacked his caravan and took off with the documentation. The documents are a written massive with proof of treason within the guard regiments of Gransis. One company is far too well equipped, and Fatal means to bring this to the Duke's attention. He offers to pay me from his own pocket, and I agree to find his paperwork. My party makes for the site where the wagon was attacked. The road is congested with bandits, but they are becoming less of a threat and more target practice as I advance in Magic Archer. The site is a mess of dead oxen and the remnants of a wagon. A cutscene shows a winged creature leaving the area, and Owen says I should pursue the beast. The trail leads to Soulflare Canyon, where the creature, a gargoyle who apparently likes to hoard paperwork for its nest, which is a little weird, resides. But whatever. The area is overrun with harpies that can easily toss your hero or one of your pawns to their death. Soulflare Canyon has a lot of verticality. The area looks awesome, littered with rickety walkways and shambling ladders. The heights and dark atmosphere as bats swarm in the distance gives this area a really cool look. Killing the gargoyle is really easy, actually. I have a magic bow, you see, and he's on a small platform. I sent him to the brine in just 3 shots. The hard part was actually getting to the nest to collect the fucking paperwork. But with the documents finally in hand, I returned to Fadal, whom, yes, you have to meet at night in the castle gardens again. Upon entering the castle grounds, a guard named Sir Gabrian stops me and suggests that I give the papers to him instead of Fadal. Gabrian serves under Sir Dario, who just so happens to be the captain of the guardsmen who are being accused of treason. I refuse to give him the papers, and he threatens me, but never actually follows through on his threat.
I'll not pursue the matter further. Not here, at least.
With Sir Sissy threats out of the way, I head to Fadal and give him the documents. Fadal is thankful and awards me with a big fat sack of gold. Although I still had quests available in the city, I wanted to return to the Witchwood. My hope was to once again speak with Sophia at the gravesite to learn more about the arisen condition. What I found was a man sitting near the gravesite and a lootable stone slab leaning against the tombstone. The man offered to translate, but I refused his price and instead decided I would take it to the church to see if they would be able to decipher it similar to the stones in the Water God's temple. I did some exploration in the area and came across an invincible metal golem. This is the first time while playing the game that I encountered a creature that made my class choice obsolete. The golem is immune to all damage, and instead the player is forced to attack floating metal discs to deal damage to the creature. The problem here was that the discs were also immune to magic. The discs located on the ground were easy enough. I still had daggers and could break them alongside my companions. The issue was the floating discs in the air. Owen would take shots at them occasionally, but as soon as the golem got close, he would go full Spider-Man and try to climb the golem. I spent way too much time trying to bait the golem away and then sprint back to the disc in hopes that Owen would shatter it before the golem arrived. As I said, after way too much time attempting this tactic, I decided I would retry this encounter as a different class, using a fairy stone to escape the fight and then return as a ranger. Now armed with a longbow, I was able to smash the disc and claim victory over the golem, but not before waking up a regular golem in the process, and I killed him too. Upon returning to Grand Soren, I sought out Geoffrey, the head of the church in Gransis. He was perplexed by the writings and claimed them to be Wormspeak. pointing all clues to the Dragon Forged, so I packed up my team and headed out towards Hillfigure Knoll. The Dragon Forged is able to identify the tablet as the Arisen's bond. It is an item presented to all Arisen, and it binds the fate of the Arisen to another person. It is an oath given form. The Dragon Forged believes that this is a test for the Arisen, though at the moment I'm not sure what all that means. The tablet then magically transforms into a ring and is a symbol of an oath that binds the Arisen to that which he holds most dear. The Dragon Forge goes on to say that because the bond became a ring, it is people that I hold most dear, and I'm assuming the person I give the ring to being the pinnacle of that oath. He then goes on to warn caution in giving the ring to someone because they could be my shield or my undoing, and that is the nature of the test. The quest rewards me with the ring and a sizable amount of experience. I'll get into the Arisen's bond mechanic and my thoughts later on. For now, I pocket the ring and head back to Grand Soren. During my exploration of the capital, and the castle in particular, I came across Maribel. She is a handmaiden to Lady Aelinor, the Duke's wife. Maribel proclaims that Lady Aelinor wants to speak with me in private on matters most important, but I must seek her out in her chambers at night, but to be careful, for she is a married woman, and having me visit at such an hour could tarnish the lady's good reputation. I agree to return later that evening. That night I return to the castle and find Maribel in the gardens as she bids me caution when going to the lady for the second time. I tried to sneak through this mission, but just ended up walking past all the guards to Aelinor's room because Dragon's Dogma does not have a stealth system, as we've already covered. Now, when I accepted this quest, I thought that the quest would involve some political intrigue, and perhaps the lady was in distress at the hands of the clearly asshole Duke, that this quest would have me gathering evidence or seeking out something personal to Lady Aelinor, like maybe her family was trapped somewhere, being held hostage by the Duke to keep her in line, and she needed me to see to their rescue to help her escape the clutches of Duke Dragonsbane, or, I don't know, something worthy of a fucking hero. What I got was Lady Aelinor rubbing up all over my armor like a drunken prom date, claiming,
"You must think me a shameless harlot."
"Yeah, bitch, you're married to the most powerful man in Gransis, and I am the Arisen, and although he was kind of rude when we first met, I am one of his sworn swords with a duty to slay the calamity that is causing all this mess. And you want to play oh woe's me and my aching thighs? I don't care how batshit the Duke is. You put your name on the dotted line and said I do. Get counseling. Or, better yet, jump off a balcony in distress. I hear that was pretty popular in medieval fantasy. I mean, it made Strahd the Vampire of Ravenloft the Dark Lord he is today. Regardless, I have no power in this cutscene, and I am forced to hide as the Duke and his jester barge into the room. The Duke is slobbering like a dog as the jester says some creepy pervy shit, and then the Duke begins to give Lady Aelinor the Darth Vader special. The Duke is crying an apology to Lenore, not Aelinor mind you, just Lenore. I didn't give this much thought at the time, but it is actually story relevant much later on. Anyway, the game puts me back in control of my character behind the changing screen, and I can either stay hidden or intervene with the scarfing in progress. I give it a second because, you never know what weird shit couples are into these days. But Aelinor isn't choking out a safety word, so I draw my bow and step out. Now, I have a lot to say about what happens next, but I'm just going to let you watch it, and then I'll say my piece.
What have I?
Your Grace, Edmund, this isn't... This wicked fool mistook a trifling kindness that I once paid for something more. He stole into my room. I was terrified. This commoner must be made to learn, sire. Give him a taste of the lash and a stay in the dungeon. Thirsty, I know you're there!
Milady is mistaken. I would never violate His Grace's privacy while he violates Milady's privacy.
Oh, brook none of your japes, fool! Summon the guards! Have have this villain removed!
Okay, so this is a forced romance plot in Dragon's Dogma. Aelinor requests that I visit her at night to discuss something important. She then rubs up on my hero, the Duke breaks in and begins to choke her to death. I intervene and she frames me as a would-be rapist. I am thrown in jail and beaten. She then arrives with keys and tells me to run, making me an enemy of the duchy, would-be rapist, and now escaped convict. In one quest, the reputation of my hero went from arisen savior of the people to this bullshit. Aelinor is an idiot, and I'm sorry to everyone who fell for this steaming quest of Garbo and thinks Aelinor is their beloved. I mean, at least it's not Madeline, right? Anyway, escaping the dungeon frees the arisen of all burdens of guilt and prosecution. Everyone in the world goes right back to their Saturday morning cartoons and forgets all of this. There is no repercussions for any of this. No consequences, just here's your experience, now back to the heroic shit. This is a stupid fucking quest. Not because of bad writing, but the game isn't scripted to make any of this relevant once all the cutscenes play out. Now, I am aware that this same thing is true concerning other quests in the game, but this derails the main story, or it should. The Arisen should immediately be removed from the Duke's Worm Hunt questline, and actively hunted by the Kingdom until this mess is resolved and the Arisen clears their name, because the player still has to deal with the Duke and his guards. A simple fix for this is to make it the last quest done before facing the dragon, but new players are probably not going to do this and have a similar experience as I did, an immersion-breaking one, and I'm not sure how long you can wait to do this quest because quests can be failed or missed depending on how far the Arisen progresses the main storyline. What's more is Aelinor is painted as the Arisen's love. She is a married woman and a dumb one at that. She has you sneak into her room, throws herself at you, and then has you arrested and beaten, so at best you are the Arisen of adultery and stealer of wives. Hard pass, Dragon's Dogma. Okay, I think I've said my piece. Let's just move on. After the debacle at the castle, I decided to do some more exploration of Gransis. I was attacked by a griffin shortly after leaving the castle, and enjoyed putting down another boss-like encounter. I can't stress enough that fighting monsters in Dragon's Dogma is an absolute delight, and in my opinion, a worthy enough reason to play the game. My journey led to a dark forest that housed an abbey. Within the abbey, I was surprised to find Kina. She has decided to join the abbey in her search to find a cure for the Arisen crisis. She is a skilled healer by all rights, but wants to solidify her place amongst her sisters and the church. She offers me a flower that she has enchanted with magical or alchemical properties, and asks if I will present it to the higher-ups of the church to see if her skills have improved. I agree because she's a friend, and it is clear that she cares for our condition. I decided to take the flower to Geoffrey, head of the chapel in Grand Soren. He's very impressed with her skill as a healer and looks forward to her progress within the religion and believes she has the Maker's touch when it comes to aiding others. With the head of the church's approval, I head back out to deliver the good news to Kina. Kina is overjoyed at hearing the news and has set her sights upon joining the great cathedral on the mainland. Her path seems pretty clear, and I'm happy to have helped a friend. Also in the Covenant is Sister Claris. She has been helping Kina enhance her techniques as a healer, and already believes that Kina is ready to join the church's ranks at the Great Cathedral. Kina is scheduled to leave the Abbey for the cathedral soon, and Claris wants to surprise her with a parting gift. She asks that I retrieve a pilgrim's talisman from the crypts to bring her luck upon her journey. I already had a pilgrim's talisman in my storage from exploring earlier, and was happy to part with it. Kina is offered the Abbey's blessing and receives the talisman. I'm a little sad to see her go, but she will no doubt continue to be a positive force in the world within her new position on the mainland. She is very grateful and leaves to begin her journey. Good luck, cousin. I know you'll change the lives of those you meet. Also during my exploration, I came across Sir Dario of the Windbluff Tower Garrison. You remember the troops that were under suspicion by Fadal who lost his paperwork to the Gargoyle? Well, it would seem that his men are short of food supplies and requests that I speak to his lord to request a week's worth of rations for his starving men. It just so happens that his lord is none other than Julian, the knight I followed to Madeline's shop for Mason, who is also in cahoots with Salvation. Puzzle pieces are coming together. Julian is a knight from a foreign duchy. His men are here at the request of the Duke to aid in the Dragon Crisis. Julian is clearly here for some form of sedition against Gransis, but I don't have any hard evidence as of yet. His men are overly supplied for battle, he is in league with a cult of dragon worshippers, and just has that I'm a bad guy vibe all about him. But he is very well spoken and is generous to his soldiers, offering the food requested, and some food from his personal stock for Sir Dario. I deliver the meal and inform Dario that his lord has agreed to the terms and then some. Dario is glad to have supplies on their way and rewards me for my time. Okay, now we are going to cover another one of the game's bad quests. It's called Nameless Terror. Remember when I spoke with Sir Rickard and he warned me that I was being hunted by would-be assassins, and we got that cutscene of the men watching the gates of Grand Soren from afar, all smothered with ill intent? Yeah, this quest is very cool in theory. You are the Arisen and a cult group of would-be assassins once you dead, like some Game of Thrones faceless men shit or Dark Brotherhood level of you've been marked for death. I searched my ass off for this quest and finally was forced to look it up on the wiki to actually complete it. The assassins only attack your hero at certain locations on the map and only at night, and you can only face down their leader if you have managed to spawn the other assassins and defeated them. The quest can bug out if you happen to murder one of them before he gets to complete his bad guy speech, forcing you to reload and try again. The pathway they use to ambush the Arisen is from the bridge to the northern Gransis, past the abandoned mine, through the pass between Cassardis and the capital, and finally facing down the main baddie right outside of Cassardis. From a story aspect, this all seems fine, but the execution of the quest and the bad guys themselves miss the mark big time. I shouldn't have to hunt down my mysterious assassins. They should be ambushing me when I least expect it, not playing hide and seek in the grass right outside of the Arisen's hometown. Again, I think it's a very cool idea, it just falls flat in execution. Now, the reward is 30,000 gold and 12,000 experience, earning me level 42, so at least there's that. With the Skyrim version of the Dark Brotherhood dealt with, I decided to head back to Aldous and begin the Duke's task for the worm hunt. He offered two choices, either aiding in a hunting expedition or gathering evidence for a trial. I wanted to face off against a real enemy, so I chose the monster hunt. Aldous informed me that reports of caravans bearing tribute bound for the capital were being attacked by a monster, and that I was to aid the king's guard in luring out the beast and killing it. The monster was a griffin, and I lured the creature with a goblin's corpse. But before we could finish off the creature, it took flight, fleeing towards Blue Moon Tower in the northern part of Gransis. The road to Blue Moon Tower is blocked by harpies, direwolves, a cyclops, and bandits. None were a match for my companions and arcane arrows. Fighting my way up the tower pit my team against undead warriors and mages. They too fell before my party. The actual fight with the griffin was a lot of fun. It is a more cinematic battle in minor stages, as the griffin assaults your party and the guards as you battle your way to the top of the tower to finally face the creature. During the battle with the griffin, Stefan, the man who was seeking Salamet's grimoire, arrives and aids you in the fight using magic. Since I gave him a real tome and not a forgery, his magic was a suitable assistance in the fight. I can only imagine his dismay if I had given him a fake, but since I had offered the real book, he was an asset, and together we were able to deliver a killing strike to the griffin. An additional port crystal is located at the top of the tower, and I decided to place it right outside the tower in case I ever needed to be in this region again. Upon returning to Aldous, he is pleased to have the beast dead and asks if I'm ready to take on another task. The trial is against Fornival, and the player is requested to gather evidence either in Fornival's defense or his guilt. He is suspected of a litany of crimes, including bribery, fraud, abduction, and selling secrets, and working with Salvation. I agree to take part in the trial and am given 4 days to gather evidence. I'm gonna be honest here, I don't care about Fornival's guilt or not. He is a merchant and a father. He sold his land and had some tenants removed, yes. Now, it's not like they were thrown out on the street. I gave them 30,000 gold. His daughter is a brat, sure, but gave me a golden idol for being nice to her, and come on, she's just a kid and a product of her environment. The idol allowed me to upgrade Caxton's inventory, better preparing me for the dangers to come. Fornival sells powerful talismans and wakestones, as well as a maker's finger finger a one-hitter quitter arrow. As far as I can tell, he's done more for me than most of the people of Grand Soren. Besides, the justice system in the capital is bullshit anyways. Everyone's gonna forget that he did anything as soon as the cutscene is over, right? Regardless, I decide to prove him innocent of the charges, allowing me to keep him alive as a merchant and for his daughter to keep her father. With the trial out of the way, Aldous commemorates me for my due diligence and offers 2 more quest options. Recover a stolen item or assist Sir Mercedes. I decide to recover the item. The item in question is a magical ring known as the Worm King's Ring. It aids in spellcasting and belongs to the Duke himself. The ring has gone missing, believed to have been stolen by a former member of the Scholars of Grand Soren, none other than the Archmage Salamet. I am able to track Salamet to the abandoned mines and don't bother giving him a chance to talk and open fire with an arcane barrage at him and his bandit goons. This part in the quest actually made me laugh, because I beat this nerd's ass. I mean, he was being held by my fighter companion Alanon as I rained dagger blows to his face when all of a sudden the scene switched to his grand escape cutscene. In true Green Arrow bad guy fashion, he poofs away and I'm forced to track his whereabouts again. After talking to some merchants back in Grand Soren, I learned that he has retreated to his new lair, the recently griffin-free Blue Moon Tower. Man, I am so glad I placed a port crystal there after the Big Bird fight, making getting there simply a loading screen away. The tower is now infested with brigands that try to halt my progression up the tower, but by this point in the game these guys are barely a threat at all, so we butcher them wholesale. Upon arriving at the top of the tower, Salamet is sitting on the floor and tries to show his power by going Super Saiyan with red magic. Now, this guy is supposed to be a master magic user and a threat. He is not, and 3 arrows later, I send Salamet canoeing off the tower as the ring slips off his finger, all Lord of the Rings style. The Worm King's Ring is a very cool item. You don't actually equip the ring, but having it in your inventory decreases casting time for all spells and spell-like abilities. Magic archery is spell-like, so I make a forgery of the ring to deliver to Duke Chocobitch. Aldous is overjoyed to have the fake ring back and awards me with a fat sum of gold and experience. Aldous then requests that I aid Sir Mercedes in a matter he had intended for me, but she insisted that the task be hers. Mercedes is the daughter of Hearthstone's lord, and was sent as a knight in good faith to the Duke. Aldous believes that I am better suited to the task and asks that I at least assist her in the matter. Aldous never tells me what the actual task is and only insists that I help keep Mercedes safe. I have not forgotten her assistance against the Hydra and I consider her a friend, so I agree. Mercedes can be found in the courtyard and insists that the task is hers. She agrees to me tagging along but wants to prove herself and asks that I allow her the chance, and I agree to that as well. The matter concerns Lord Julian and that there are dark things happening at the Stone of the North. Sir Dario's men, if you recall, and the men Julian sent foodstuffs to so generously, and were also under suspicion of being overly equipped. It would appear that their treason to Gransis has finally come to light, and Mercedes plans to confront Lord Julian in the fort and prove herself a knight. Upon arriving at the fort, a battle is already underway. Mercedes' men fight the traitors of Sir Dario and Lord Julian. I join the fray and kill Sir Dario, and aid the knights under Mercedes in taking the upper hand, then follow Mercedes to a showdown with Lord Julian. I'm just gonna let this scene speak for itself.
Viper! You colluded with Salvation to work sedition among the Duke's men!
Salvation? You place me in ill company. I'm a man of this world. Fantasies of death and redemption concern me not one whit. Now legends. Legends stoke up the masses. If Duke Edmund were to best a second dragon, Gransis would take the ascendant. But her neighbors ill want a giant looming at their borders, am I wrong?
Spare me your sophistry! The word neighbor sours on your forky tongue. Our lands have long sworn unstinting aid to any neighbor beset by the dragon.
Unstinting, you say? Tell me then, why has your Lord Father not sent your brother, joined by Hearthstone's finest steel?
Why am I speaking instead with a bleating she-goat mocked even by our own men?
You will retract those words, sir!
Else suffer what consequence?
Else I shall wash my honor clean in your blood!
And you? You will play her second? I would welcome the challenge.
Stay out of this! He's made an open mockery of me and my homeland!
I really enjoyed their dialogue and the reasoning of both knights in this confrontation. It's a great scene, and the voice acting and use of language in Dragon's Dogma is great. The two are pit against one another in a duel, and the Arisen is left with the choice of siding with Mercedes or Julian. I mean, you can if you really want to. I'm not sure why you would, but you can. Or watching Mercedes lose to Lord Julian. Mercedes can't beat him in a fight. I reloaded multiple times just to see if she could, and she can't. Mercedes is doomed to lose to Julian if you don't interfere. And I'm not about to let that happen. She is a friend, a knight, and a fantastic character. Her story isn't about to end at the hands of Julian while I twiddle my thumbs. I know she isn't happy that I stepped in. I know she is ashamed that she couldn't beat him on her own, but she deserves better than a beating both physical and emotional at the hands of this narrow-sighted knight. Better that a friend stand beside her, letting her know that regardless of her decision to remain a knight or not, she will not have to face the darkness alone. Helping Mercedes ends in Julian's death, and Mercedes decides to return to her homeland and gather what aid she can to help in the coming of the dragon. Her pride has been bruised as a knight, yes, but her resolve in doing the right thing was not shaken by this defeat. Now, this next part I found to be very interesting. Upon approaching Julian's corpse, I was given the option to aid him. Doing so uses a wake stone if the Arisen happens to have one. I did, and this resurrects Lord Julian. He is bewildered and admits ultimate defeat. I am his slayer and yet stole him away from death, giving him a second chance at life. He swears to turn himself in and find justice within the courts of Gran Soren. I decided to visit the castle dungeon to see if Julian would be there, and he was. And that's pretty surprising considering my time in jail. Julian had confessed to the courts and now awaited their verdict on what should be done with him. I'm not really sure why I freed him from his cell. I felt that there was more to his story. Julian is a good villain and yet an honorable knight. I had stereotyped him as a trademark villain from the moment I saw him, but there was honor in this man, a soldier who cared for his country and had the good sense to brush off his pride when beaten. The chopping block would not be his fate. I had taken his life and saved him from death twice now. I broke him out of prison and he rewarded me with his shield. This was a great quest, the build-up to the confrontation with Julian, all the side quests related to finally confronting the sedition of Gransis, Mercedes, Julian, the voice acting, the writing. This was a fantastic end to a very good quest. Returning to Aldous has him offering praise for a job well done, but before he can elaborate, a guard interrupts, whispering a message into the counselor's ear. Aldous says that a pressing matter has come up and that I am to make for the southern Way Castle immediately, that one of the king's men has returned from afar and is gravely wounded, and that he will speak only to the Arisen. The Way Castle is protected by the Duke's Guard, so I decide to do some shopping before heading out. Upon arriving at Madeline's shop, I find that she has fled, having been accused of dealing illicit goods from Salvation. I know that she's involved because she had dealings with Julian when shadowing him from the castle for Mason. After some investigation, I find Madeline fleeing the capital through the slums. She forgot to bring her heavenly daggers with her, and I return them. She swears that she is innocent of the crimes and hides as a guard approaches. I think that she is a bad liar, and her cleavage isn't enough to stop me from telling the guards where she is. Well, that's what I thought I did. The guards asked if I knew where she was. I said yes, and they ran off. Madeline then appeared, thanking me and asking for more money. Fool me once, bitch. I told her no and was happy to have this absurd character out of my face. With the bad business behind me, I headed out towards the Way Castle. Upon arriving, I was approached by a guard who claimed that I was to return to Aldous immediately. The screen then widens to show the capital burning. I wanted to know more, though, and approached one of the guards at the Way Castle. He claimed that there was never a wounded soldier from afar and knew nothing of the subject. Very interesting. Grand Soren was just a ferry stone away, and I teleported back to the capital. Upon arriving at the Pawn Guild, I could see a massive bird-like creature rampaging around the nearby fields. The creature was a cockatrice, and Owen made me spit my drink all over my keyboard by shouting this.
There's the head of a cock!
The cockatrice was destroying the tribute for the Dragon Crisis. Without hesitation, my team went to work. I wasn't able to kill the creature, but wounded it enough to chase it off. I really like it when a game's enemies are fatal. The cockatrice has a petrifying breath weapon that can turn you or your pawns to stone, killing them immediately. It was a cool battle, and I'm hoping that I get to face one later on. With the creature gone, I returned to Aldous, who berated himself for allowing an agent of salvation to manipulate the court and release such a creature upon Grand Soren. He was happy that I was able to chase the beast off and thanked me for my effort. Which brings me to another dumb quest called Search Party. During my journey, I kept coming across journal entries of a man seeking revenge against a Hydra for the death of his daughter. He had left his pregnant wife with their unborn son, Reynard, to seek the creature out, eventually failing and losing his life in the attempt. Reynard is the traveling merchant I saved the first time I left Cassardis. He was being assaulted by goblins and gifted me a cloak for saving him. It took me forever to track this nerd down, finally cornering him at the encampment, and he didn't have a quest. This quest becomes available after purchasing a certain number of items from him. Each time has to be a complete transaction, meaning you have to tell him goodbye and then speak with him again and do this 10 fucking times. He will then have a quest asking for a piece of scrap iron. What? Then you have to complete 5 more separate fucking purchases from him, and he will offer another quest to bring him 1 miasmite. Then you have to make 10 more separate purchases from him, and he will finally trust you and see you as his best customer. Asshole, I'm your only customer. After completing all that stupid nonsense is when he will ask about his father's journals and that he has been searching for them, and that is why he is a traveling merchant, to uncover clues about his father's fate. There are 6 journal entries total, and they are located throughout Gransis. Upon handing over the journals, he decides that his life quest is complete and he will leave, no longer being available as a merchant to the Arisen. In theory, this could have been a good story. A boy becoming a traveling peddler, all in search of clues about his missing father's fate, and would have been fine without the 25 separate purchases gatekeeping his fucking story. The execution of this quest is stupid. Whoever, figured this quest out first, what the fuck is your story, huh? I had to once again rely on the wiki to figure this out, and this quest can be easily missed. Now, the rewards are pretty good. You receive the Roth Mask, which is basically a pocket spellcaster that can be used to cast a spell at random. Unfortunately, the mask is an item in your inventory and can't actually be worn. It's still pretty cool though. After hours of combing the land for more quests and fighting monsters, I decided it was time to continue pursuing the main story and return to Aldous. He said my next mission would take me far from the capital, and said that if there was any unfinished tasks I had to complete, that now was the time. The Duke wanted to see me and wished to give me the task personally. I decided that I had one thing left to do before heading out to see what the Duke wanted of me. I still had the Arisen's bond ring in my inventory and decided I wanted to give it to Celine, not as my hero's lover. For me, this was a father's promise to a daughter, and although Celine had lived 1,000 lives as an immortal pawn, I felt that she would need a friend as she grew and learned what it meant to be human. She already lived at my home, and I often checked in on her to deliver herbs for tavern ale quests and ensure that both her and Cassardis were okay. I had grown fond of her and found her story as a once pawn now human due to the bestowal of spirit from Sophia intriguing. I wasn't sure what this meant in-game, and to be honest, I'm not sure I holistically agree with the affection mechanic in Dragon's Dogma, or any RPG for that matter. Usually it's fill a certain meter to make whatever NPC fall in love with your character. It's a broken system, but hey, I suppose it's better than nothing. Now, normally I'm happy to go without a romantic interest in games. There are exceptions, of course, but if I had to choose a romance to pursue in Dragon's Dogma, I feel I resonated with Mercedes the most. I would have said Kina, who clearly has feelings for the Arisen, but she almost has a sister or close relative vibe to her, and it's a little off-putting that everyone in Cassardis calls each other cousin. All that being said, I gave the ring to Celine and bid both her and Cassardis farewell. I returned to Aldous and told him I was ready. The Duke claimed to be greatly pleased for all I had accomplished and said I was to be rewarded and bid that I follow him. The Duke led me to a guarded treasure room and then attempted to open a chest with his forged ring, and I am so glad that it didn't work. Because I gave him the forgery, he was unable to open the chest. He seemed flustered about this, and nothing in that chest is worth more than having the real precious in my nasty little pocketses. Suddenly a guard rushed into the room bearing urgent news from the Great Wall, a large bastion that defends the northern border of Gransis. Salvation has taken control of the wall. The Duke says that plans have changed and that I am to siege the Great Wall and retake it. I have been waiting for this showdown with the Elysian of Salvation, and I was eager to begin. But I wonder what nefarious expedition the Duke had planned before we were interrupted. Was his plan to simply pay me a bunch of gold and send me away on a snipe hunt? Was the Duke trying to get me out of the picture? I mean, it would fit his character. I'm too big for him to strangle gang, and clearly his dungeon is no match for my ability to unlock doors and walk short distances. Regardless, I left with the feeling that Duke Dragonsbane, for some reason or another, didn't want me to face the dragon. He wanted that glory for himself. To him, I was a tool, albeit an effective tool, but to be discarded once I had outlasted my usefulness. As I said, the Great Wall lies in the northern border of Gransis. I had already discovered it when exploring the map and had placed a port crystal because until now the place was locked off by guards, and I had a feeling it was an important place for the story, so what normally was a trek across the map was now only a ferry stone away. Upon entering the Great Wall, I was faced down by two Cyclops. They have big health pools, but are a bit on the slow side. Bringing them down was only a matter of time. The remainder of the keep was beset by undead and shadowy spellcasters of salvation. They had taken many guards prisoner, and I took it upon myself to save them, even from a chimera that had trapped itself in a storeroom. The men were thankful for the rescue, and I pushed on to finally come face to face with Salvation's leader.
Ah, the Arisen. Welcome. It would seem our fates are closely bound. The honeyed sleep of destruction will find this place, and all the world in its turn. Indeed, the coming night ill needs us, its faithful harbingers. Just as you and your hubris cannot hope to stop the divine beast that mocked you. Before its might, you stand as useless and frail as this ungainly contrivance of brick and mortar. Nonetheless, the trice you might delay the dragon's coming is blasphemy just the same. I had brought my flock to see these walls reduced to dust. But first they shall peel the flesh from your bones, my dear Arisen.
Now, that was just badass. The two servants throwing themselves on the enchanted blade to become whites and cover their master's retreat. The twin whites can be a problem. They are durable and difficult for melee characters to close the gap with, and they summon undead warriors to fight beside them. I was able to focus them down one at a time with arcane archery, while Owen and my party distracted the other and dealt with the lesser undead.
I fear I have misjudged the extent of your skill, dear Arisen. I see it was folly to worry of walls and armies while you still live. However, it seems my regret will be short-lived. Don't you feel it? The very air dances around us. The long night is come. The dragon's reign at last begins. Merciful winged death! All-powerful and merciless Grigori! Behold, you unrepentant blasphemers! This is absolute truth! This is salvation!
The rantings of an up-jump zealot make for tedious listening. His ilk serves no role in what is to come. Only my death will staunch the flood of destruction, a task still far beyond your means. If you would face me, seek me out, and I shall allow it. But heed the zealot's lesson well. When the weak court death, they find it. Until then, I shall hold your little keepsake safe. Your dragon forged will speak for my diligence in that. The choice falls not to me, nor to the whims of fate. It is yours alone.
Well, that was a fitting end for salvation, if I do say so myself. I like how the leader was swaying back and forth as if he had a degree of control over the dragon, only to be crushed under its weight. Absolute poetry. Grigori is the dragon's name, and although his challenge remains, he did mention one thing that I want to touch on because this scene really does speak for itself. Grigori spoke of my heart and how he will keep it safe and that the Dragonforged will attest to that fact. Does that mean that the Dragonforged didn't defeat a dragon? Very curious. Secondly, upon exiting the keep and surviving the collapsing tower somehow, the Arisen's bond falls to the ground before me. This can only mean one thing. Grigori has Selene. This is now a quest for more than just my heart. I recover the ring and head out to Hillfigure Knoll. The Dragonforge is cryptic, as has become his usual demeanor, and speaks of making a choice. The worm has Selene and my heart. What choice is there beyond fight? The Dragonforged also claims that my bond has proven a weakness. Yeah, we'll see about that, old man. Maybe the people in your life weren't worth risking it all for, but I have no intention of walking away from this battle. I bid the Dragonforge farewell for the last time and turn my sights on Grigori. Entering the mountain pass leads me to where I played through the tutorial last Savan. Upon entering, a message floats across the screen. Thus you tread the path of all true arisen, to face the dragon and learn the real truth. This message pairs well with the original message. In another place, in another life, another child of man blazes your path. I don't want to jump the gun, but the puzzle feels like it's coming together. This place is identical to the opening tutorial, only the monsters are much stronger. The Chimera actually scared me upon entering the fight. After dealing with stronger Saurians, Succubus, Hellhounds, and the Black Chimera, I stood before the final door separating me from Grigori, winning my heart back and saving Celine.
What is your purpose here, Arisen? If you sought to live, you had naught but run and hide yourself away. But then, tell me, child of man, what does it mean to live in truth? To wage war against the passing of days? To pray to the unseen for a few breaths more? To raise grand cities from stone and spawn new life in turn? Mankind has done this, yes, and more. But is the tapestry you weave truly of your own design?
We eat when hungry, and we sleep when tired of eating. We kiss them as we want them dead.
Their kind is easy to fathom. They go on living from simple fear of death. But not mankind. Some welcome the end with arms outstretched, while others come to face death incarnate, arms in hand. I ask again, what is your purpose here, Arisen? One path to your survival lies in my defeat. Still my heart, and you stay the coming end. Another path before you is to offer up that which you hold most dear. Abandon all delusions of control. For the price of a single life, I shall leave this land in peace. As my vanquisher, the duchy would bow to you. Wealth and power are sweet anodyne for heartache. You'll not gainsay my terms are more than generous. If it matters aught, the man who rules this land now won that honor through just such a bargain. The decision is yours, Arisen. Now, choose.
The dragon's choice is to sacrifice the person you care most about, in my case Celine due to the Arisen's bond, and the dragon will leave, only to one day return and choose another to become the Arisen. This is how the Dragonforged yet lives and the Duke. They took the dragon's deal. That is who Lenore is. The Duke sacrificed a past love to become the Duke and hold dominion over Gransis. He didn't kill the dragon. He succumbed to fear and gave up his lover, gaining a kingdom for the deal. Sweet anodyne indeed. That is why he wanted to be rid of me. He thinks I'll steal his kingdom through a similar bargain. The Dragonforged and Sophia are a little more hazy. Was the Dragonforged once a ruler, or did he bargain for immortality? And Sophia was a ghost. Did she attempt to fight the dragon and lose? I'm not super clear on their stories, but I know how mine will end. Him or me. There will be no bargain. Choosing to fight Grigori is an amazing battle. He destroys the terrain as he stomps and claws to get close to me. chasing me down a long corridor as his body smashes through stone with his fiery breath blazing at my heels. This is a cinematic battle at the beginning, forcing you to flee from him and his oppressive power as a colossal machine of death. He soars around me, bathing the area in fire as I scramble to cross a shattered stone wall, reaching the top of a crumbling tower to fire a ballista bolt at him as he collides with the tower, only to have me cling to his back and slowly crawl up his spine to deliver an attack between his massive wings, forcing him to fling me from his back as he swings around and swoops upward in an attempt to devour me in his massive maw. As our hearts pass, his weakness is exposed, and together we plummet to the ground below. It is here where we fight for real, and I am not disappointed in the slightest. Grigori is a fantastic boss encounter. He is massive and fucking terrifying. The whole time I fought him, I couldn't stop thinking, if he hits me, I'm dead. During our battle, Grigori speaks that the hurt I am visiting upon him is the same pain that he once inflicted. Was Grigori an arisen? Did he once stand his ground against a dragon? Slowly but surely, my party and I whittle him down, until finally I deliver the arrow that takes his life.
Stubborn child. Whatever meaning life holds, it makes men deaf to all reason. Heed me well, Arisen. In my death, you've won a future for this world. But what that future spells for you, for all men, is a truth you'll find staring back from this world's utmost depth. Arisen, you have earned back what is yours. Your life belongs now to no other. You've won it by rights. It is yours to use or cast away as you see fit. Remember that.
With the dragon dead and my heart once again back where it belongs, the credits begin to roll and the title card displays after I'm reunited with Celine. But things are far from over. This is a nice scene as my party and I travel back to Cassardis, but the world does not seem better for my efforts. In fact, I seem to have made matters worse. The sky is now always dark and ash floats down from above. Is this the endless night? Was the dragon keeping the real threat at bay? And with his death, have I unleashed a greater threat? The world seems a shade darker with Grigori gone. During the cutscene, a massive hole opened up within the capital, so Gransis becomes my destination. Upon arriving at Cassardis, although I have the ability to teleport to Gransis via Fairy Stone, I decide that I will walk there and see what, if anything, has changed. Upon defeating the dragon, all items equipped at the time of Grigori's death become dragon-forged. It's a nice reward for beating the dragon. With Grigori dead, the land now crawls with stronger foes. The goblins are once again a real threat, and undead crawl from the earth regardless of the hour, and another black chimera prowls the beach of Cassardus. Hellhounds and succubus congest the canyon to Grand Soren, and a golem awaits to crush any who pass. And finally, with the capital in sight, a drake bristling with dark energy patrols the sky, awaiting any who are fool enough to cross its path. Although I was able to manage these threats, they are all vastly more powerful than any regular enemies before Grigori's death. Grand Soren is a disaster. The inn is gone, as is the entire residential area of the city, leaving only the fields around the Pawn Guild, a few shops including Caxton's, and the castle. The people of Grand Soren are distraught, and reasonably so. Their city lies in ruin. I did this. I have doomed this place by seeking to save my own life. I couldn't help but wonder, was all of this worth it? I pondered the question as I entered the castle, seeking out the Duke. Duke Edmund Dragonsbargen, and the would-be slayer of Grigori, has been reduced to a shriveled old man. He is enraged at my presence and calls me a traitor and usurper, swearing that I made a deal with the dragon to steal his kingdom. For no mortal man could ever best the dragon. Then he tries to kill me. He can barely lift his sword, and I do feel a little bad about knocking an old man on his ass. I am forced to flee from the soldiers and men I once fought to protect. I am now a criminal for real, and the guards of Grand Soren will attack me on sight. I am chased all the way to the massive hole where the city market once stood.
Is a truth you'll find staring back from this world's utmost depths.
The Everfall. Is this a portal of infinite realms? The eternal ring spoken by Grigori during the tutorial to Savan? This is such an amazing concept. Infinite worlds, the Rift, and the Pawn Legion, serving 1,000 arisen and sharing adventures across an infinite span of time. And as my hero falls through these worlds, again I think of the two phrases. In another place, in another life, another child of man blazes your path. Thus you tread the path of all true arisen, to face the dragon and learn the real truth. Catching a ledge leads to another scene where a disembodied voice issues yet another challenge, and I am introduced to Quince, one of the pawns that stood beside Savan during the tutorial. She wants me to collect 20 wake stones to open a pathway to the truth. This is the original in-game content for Dragon's Dogma before the Dark Arisen DLC. But before tackling Bitterblack Isle, I decided to explore the Everfall and see what it has to offer as the game's original in-game material. The Everfall consists of levels that can be reached by jumping down to their respective ledges, and either splatting on the platform or pressing the interact key upon getting near the ledge. These rooms are an assortment of boss fights, many of which I really enjoyed. The Evil Eye, the Whites facing the Hydra, and the thrill of being forced at one point to fight a metal golem with only Owen at my side. Again, the boss fights are all fun and engaging, and although this area serves as a boss rush, I found it fun to revisit these rooms to challenge the next big bad. Leaving the Everfall to visit the outside world has its own dangers. All of the enemies are dialed to 11, and some of the major areas of the game now serve to house more dangerous boss encounters. such as a drake now roosting upon the top of Blue Moon Tower. The pinnacle of challenge during this stage of the game resides within the Everfall, known as the Dragon. While online, you face him as a quasi-raid boss. What I mean by this is that the dragon can only be fought in stages and has a massive amount of health, although he retains all damage done to him in your previous fights, and even that inflicted by other Arisen. While offline, he is more of a straightforward encounter, and although he still retains a considerable amount of health and is by far the hardest boss at this stage, he can be beaten and serves as a proving ground when deciding if you should fight his much stronger form while online. Defeating him offers solid experience and rewards of both gear and wake stones. He also has a chance to Dragonforge equipment upon defeat, although striking the killing blow while online I believe will always Dragonforge, though this is much harder to achieve. Bitterblack Island is Dragon's Dogma's one and only DLC. This takes place on a Foreboding Island dungeon. The DLC can be accessed at any time during play, but I wanted to finish the main game before taking on the island. This was due to the vastly superior equipment offered from the island, and I didn't want to trivialize any encounter that the original game offered by being overgeared. The story of Bitterblack is a bit foggy, and I apologize if I dork this up. Bitterblack Island can be reached by visiting the pier at night. Here you meet Ulra, who seems to be suffering from some degree of memory loss, and is compelled to visit the island and wishes for you to join her. Majority of the story can be read on the Stone of Remembrance. This can be pieced back together by finding slates of text throughout the dungeon. Before diving too deep into the story, I want to talk about the island itself, which seems to be a part of the Eternal Ring or Infinite Worlds similar to the Rift, but also set apart. Like, if the Eternal Ring was in fact a ring, I would consider Bitterblack the gem upon it. This is because the island seems to attract other Arisen from other worlds or realms, many of which have either gone insane or simply died here. Gransis has no moon and yet a day and night cycle. Bitterblack is trapped in an eternal nighttime, but unlike Gransis, has a moon. I see Bitterblack more akin to Ravenloft from Dungeons & Dragons. Although it connects to any and all realms, it is set apart and able to draw from all realms. Okay, the story of Bitterblack that I've been able to piece together goes as follows. And again, I'm sorry if I screw this up. Much like our hero, there was an Arisen named Gret, and she had a pawn named Ulra. Their quest was the same as ours, to slay the dragon. Along the way, they encountered a young man named Ash. His hometown was destroyed in the wake of the dragon, and Gret decided to take the young man under her protection. During their time together, Ash and Gret grew fond of each other, kindling a friendship into a romance. When the time came for Gret to confront the dragon, Gret forced Ash to stay behind or didn't want him harmed, for whatever reason. Ash was not allowed to face the dragon at Gret's side. Regardless, Gret and her pawn, Ulra, win, defeating the dragon. Gret goes on to fight something called the Seneschal and loses. The Seneschal thing kills Gret and forces her to become the next dragon. With Gret now dead and being reborn as the next dragon in the cycle, Ulra was granted the bestowal of spirit by Gret upon her defeat at the hands of this Seneschal. Now human Ulra returns to Ash, dying and wounded. Gret, now as the dragon, chooses Ash as the very next Arisen, either by design or her once emotion for him. I don't know, this isn't very clear. During his time as the Arisen, Ash comes to love Ulra, Gret's former pawn that's now human. Ulra reciprocates his emotion, then upon confronting the dragon, Ash is given the choice to either kill Gret, now the calamity of his realm, or sacrifice Ulra, his new lover. Ash doesn't want to do either of these things and decides he isn't going to play by their rules and damns everything. The dragon accepts this as his wish and kills Ulra, accepting her as his sacrifice. Over time, this wish manifests his hatred and grief, turning the once Arisen Ash into the creature Daemon. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Bitterblack is an extension of Ash's wish, or curse rather, or simply a prison that also manifested from his choice. And this is where shit gets fuzzy. Ulra, the lady who takes the Arisen to bitterblack, not the once pawn human with the same name, is possessed or saved by the spirit of Ulra, the once pawn human one, and has her guide Arisen to the Isle to defeat the now corrupted Daemon. Upon his defeat, the spirits of Ulra and Ash reunite, ending the original curse to bitterblack. The now not possessed Ulra decides to stay at bitterblack to help unravel the mysteries of I have no fucking clue, and you are unable to revisit the Isle for a time, although doing so will reveal a second stage to the Daemon fight, and a dragon-like visage will appear in his chest. Again, I'm not 100% sure what all that means. Is this second battle a fight with Ash's main pawn, as many of the pawns will linger to fulfill their master's dying wish, and Ash's pawn just sought to continue the corruption? I'm not sure. Story aside, bitterblack is a lot of fun to explore, and the fights are all way harder than anything back in Gransis. Bitterblack plays more akin to a dungeon crawler than the open world that the main story offers, and I really enjoyed the DLC as a whole. With Daemon slain, I made my way back to the Everfall and to Quince, and delivered the Wakestones. By this point in the game, I had a better understanding of this eternal ring and the infinite worlds that were so cryptically dangled before me earlier in the game. Doing so brought me face to face with the Seneschal, or the godlike overseer of life. He wanted to test my will to live, forcing me to fight him to survive. After defeating him, he tests my will to continue along the path of eternity, or accept the delightful and ever novel pleasures of a useless occupation. This has me slay the people I met throughout my journey. I believe this is to symbolize removing myself from their existence, or to choose the eternal cycle over any one person. Turning back at this point shows the Arisen back at Cassardis, reuniting with Kina and her father, as if the battle with the dragon had never occurred. The Seneschal stands overlooking us and calls me a coward and says he will seek out another. If you decide to pursue the Seneschal, it reveals that he is in fact Savan, the Arisen from the tutorial. He will face you in actual combat alongside his main pawn and allow you to summon yours. For me, this was Owen. Losing to the Seneschal shows your hero falling from the sky, as you are now cursed to become the next dragon, continuing the cycle. This was Grigori's fate. He was an Arisen who lost, same as Gret, thus continuing the cycle. This realization painted Grigori in a new light for me. Unlike the Duke or the Dragonforged, Grigori had the mettle to face down the dragon and win. He conquered his fears and couldn't be swayed by the dragon's bargain, refused to sacrifice his honor and that which he loved most, and slayed the dragon, only to lose at the hands of Savan, making Grigori just as much of a hero in my book as any. The dragon is then bound by Dogma to seek another who may be worthy. Have you ever played a game that once the story pieces come together, you have to take a break to drink it all in? This is what happened to me as soon as I figured this out. To defeat the Seneschal requires that your pawn grab hold of him as you deliver the killing blow. This decides your fate as the new Seneschal, where you are tasked to oversee life and death upon Gransis, and to one day spawn the dragon to seek your replacement. Upon his death, Savan presented the Godsbane sword. This is the only tool capable of killing him. He is not angry with this passing of the torch, and instead feels relief to finally be free of the endless cycle. With Savan's death, I become the new Seneschal of Gransis, and the cycle, life, and death are mine to oversee, until the day I select a dragon and set him loose on Gransis in search of one who has the will to take the mantle of Seneschal from me. From my throne, I'm able to revisit both Cassardis and Gran Soren. There appears to be no aftermath of the things I have endured to reach this point. The realm seems to exist as if I had never been. Cassardis seems free of the tyranny of the dragon, and Gran Soren as if the opening of the Everfall had never occurred. Almost as if in defeating Savan, I reset the world to a time right before I became an important part of its history. Although the world is now safe, and one could consider this a victory, I was left with the feeling that this is just an illusion. I am only a gear in this eternal ring, albeit an important role, but still trapped within the confines of this eternal machine. I returned to my throne. Owen was there. He was always there. He had stood beside me in this conflict. enduring his vigil with dignity and honor. He had saved me from death with his valor and courage and was ever thankful to be at my side. He was my brother. He deserved more than the eternal life as a pawn to the god of endless insanity. I drew forth the Godsbane. I wasn't sure if this would break the endless cycle. I wasn't sure if it could be broken. With no seneschal, there could be no dragon. With no dragon, there could be no arisen. I wasn't sure if this would affect the world at all. I had given Celine the Arisen's bond as a father would make a promise to his daughter. I couldn't fulfill that promise, but what I could do was send her a protector, an ally, and the greatest friend one could wish for. Owen, I grant you the bestowal of spirit.
Master!
You're like me, aren't you? As my grandmother gave me life, he gave you yours. They gave us death, and with it, true life. This is the world he wanted for us.
Dragon's Dogma is a wonderful game, and although I'm sure I missed things along the way, it has so much worth when it comes to gameplay, combat, and the subtlety of its storytelling. And although the game has a few quests that I would consider on the shallower end of the questing pool, and the occasional jank when climbing a creature from time to time, I think this game is fantastic. The story of the Arisen and your battle to win back your heart from the dragon and unravel the mysteries of the endless cycle was an amazing experience. Tackling the bitterblack island and delving into its depths as a more linear dungeon crawl to face down terrible foes and speculate on what happened to Gret, Ulra, and Ash had me scouring the darkest corners of the island. And finally coming face to face with the reality that my destiny as the Arisen was to die and grant life to my companion. And with all things considered, I'd say it was a worthy end to a great game. This is the first time that I've covered a game from beginning to end in a single video, as opposed to my RPG Spotlight series that acts as more of a first impressions to MMOs and RPGs. I hope that you enjoyed your time here, and I hope to see you in the comments explaining to me what really happened to Ash on Bitterblack Island, because I'm still not 100% sure I know what went down, or just expressing your thoughts on the game in general. I want to take a moment to thank my channel members, both Oracle and Bishop. Also, an additional thank you to Bishop for helping me come up with a title for this series. I'm hoping to cover more games like this because although the longer form content does take some time to produce, I really enjoyed making this video. Well, I feel like I've sucked up enough of your time, so that is going to be it for me for Dragon's Dogma. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, thank you again for your time. I hope to see you again, and have an amazing day, guys. Goodbye.